So hello and welcome to everybody who's watching Mission Marketplace. This is the second session and it's themed initiatives or answering a need in our community. And there are many people here who are doing that and they're doing it in very wonderful and interesting ways. And so that's what we're hearing this morning is all these different community initiatives. The first person I would like us to, so people who are speaking will introduce themselves because I know there's some information I might miss out, so you can then tell everybody what you want them to know. I think that's more important. So I'm going to hand over to Emma. Emma has a little baby there, so but she's been very willing to come and speak to us this morning. So over to you, Emma.
Thanks, Hallie. If you hear any strange sounds, it's not me, honestly. It's the 4-week-old baby that's currently sat on my knee, but she's not very Zoom trained. So unlike the big ones that I've sent outside, she's a little bit little to send outside into the backyard and told to play quietly. So my name's Emma Dacey. I'm based over in East Cleveland, which is part of the Cleveland and Danby circuit. In fact, if you took me and Hallie, I think we're at the opposite ends of the district, as far north and south as you could get. And I'm based with a project called Hope for East Cleveland. And we, very early in lockdown, did what a lot of churches did and sort of, I suppose, panicked a bit and thought, what do we do now? Because we can't do anything we normally do. And then we did that lull ourselves into, well, when it's June, it'll all be over and we'll just be able to go back to normal. And then it became very apparent when we got to June that that was not going to be the case in any stretch of anyone's imagination. So we started looking at how we could move from doing very face-to-face community work to more remote community work. And at first, I'll be honest with you, at first it was a needs-must basis. It was just what we're going to do this week, hand-to-mouth basis. But we identified a few things that when we had a cool, calm chat about June time, about how we could do it more strategically. So how we could address people accessing spiritual and faith content, how we could address youth work and children's work, especially youth work and children's work that aren't big enough necessarily to get very much out of Zoom. When you're 3, Zoom doesn't work. When you're 13, Zoom still doesn't work. So how we could address that, how we could address people who had found themselves in quite difficult financial circumstances. They've been furloughed or they've been made redundant. A lot of people in our area work in hospitality and catering. So a lot of those jobs were seriously affected. And we decided to sort of take those 3 kind of approaches. In the summer, we normally have, some of you will know, a holiday club running. We have about 90 to 100 children who attend holiday club, who had all booked in pre-pandemic. Our holiday club gets booked up really early, so by March we were booked up. So we had these children booked in, and obviously it became very apparent we weren't going to meet. So we came up with Holiday Club at Home. Holiday Club at Home was very much about trying to do holiday club in your house. It was like remote schooling. So we had boxes, they were great big cool bags, and they had a meal kit in so you could share a meal as a family. And the idea behind that was that addressed people who were finding it really tough financially, because there was supplies there to make a hearty meal for your family, including the parents. We did online content that the kids could dial into. And instead of dialing into Zoom like this, we did what Hallie said, we had it on YouTube so people could watch it at whatever time fit them. So there was a story time for the little ones. There was a short teaching session for the older ones. I suppose like you would have a holiday club. That was kind of teaching content. We had paper teaching content in the boxes. We had crafts in the boxes. And the families came and collected them once a week. And it was really successful. Over the summer holidays. And then we got into autumn and we were like, this isn't going to go away. We've managed a few things off the back of that. So what came off the back of that was we got access to Fair Share to help us fill our boxes. and we now run what we call our pop-up shop. And pop-up shop isn't a food bank, so it isn't about just handing out food parcels. It's about low-cost groceries, and it's about environmental impact. So these are products that are surplus runs, or maybe have a printing error on the label. We've got cornflakes that have a letter wrong on them. On the actual bit that says cornflakes, it's a spelling error, so they can't put them in the supermarket. So pop-up shop was very much an idea of getting low-cost groceries. So it's not about giving them away for free. People pay a couple of pounds a week for their groceries. So it helps people with that sort of halfway step between needing a food bank and actually just finding it really tough on a week-by-week basis. So we've started doing that. We also looked at our toddlers. Most of them are a little bit bigger than Florence. And toddlers don't work very well on Zoom. Toddler parents don't work very well on Zoom either. We tried a toddler parent Zoom meeting, and all that happened was we listened to toddlers crying as they all made noise in the background, and parents got very stressed. So we had toddler bags. So once a week, our toddlers get a bag with a box of juice in and a snack in, just like they'd have a toddlers. And then we put in some little craft activities that they can do with their toddlers. And everybody sort of has gone to sharing photographs instead. So they're like, they just do it by, I suppose, a bit like Instagram. Everyone takes photos of their kids doing stuff, and we go, oh, doesn't, you know, Katie look great this week, and really nice to see what Hallie's doing, and all that kind of like stuff that goes on. So it's just been a way that toddler parents have been able to connect in a different way. For us, it's very much about maintaining connections between people. We very found that people felt very isolated. We are quite rural, so when we had the first lockdown right at the beginning and pretty much everything shut, you couldn't really have got to anywhere because the buses stopped running, and we had one shop. In fact, we did see each other. We saw each other in the queue for the co-op, and that was pretty much it. This time it's been a little bit easier. We've got things sort of up in place more. So looking forward, I suppose, at Christmas, we're doing Christmas boxes. We're doing Christmas stuff online with spiritual content again. At half term, we managed social distancing outside, and everybody was like ecstatic. It absolutely chucked it down. It was on the day of Halloween. We had a pumpkin event, and it was the worst weather you've ever seen. It was literally hurricane gales. And we had about 120 people turned out to hunt for pumpkins around the village in the worst weather you have ever seen. I felt really sorry. We had two of our young leaders, they're on the Do Less programme. They were absolutely frozen to literally the core. And people sort of waved at each other, but just that human interaction of having to space out 100 people over a day was just a nightmare. But people being able to see each other even from a distance made a huge difference to people's well-being. And everyone said the boxes had been great. The online stuff is great, but even just being able to wave at somebody across the park actually just feels even better. So we're really looking for hopefully, if things start to improve in the spring, even if we can do things at a distance but in person, really looking at the feedback from our families has been that makes a huge difference. Being able to get out of the house, even if it is blowing a gale, makes a huge difference to people's mental health and their well-being, rather than just on a computer screen. So it's about, for us, it was about looking and just, I think, being flexible. I think that would be our word we've taken from this. Have a go at something. We had a go at youth group Zoom and scrapped it. I'm sure that there are youth group Zooms that are working really well, but they did not work with our young people. So it's about having the confidence to have a go at something and go, is this working? Is it not working? If it's not working, that's fine. We've had a go. Like, can we think of another way that it might work? Can we think of something else we can do? So I think that's, I hope I've covered everything. I'm not quite sure what I was coming on to talk about. So, so hopefully that helps.
Let's unmute myself. Yes, thank you, Emma. Yeah, absolutely. This is what we wanted to hear. So thank you for your time.
All right.
Right, so we're going to move from East Cleveland to Darlington. So it's going to be Graham, is it? Or Morvyn?
It's both of us.
You both of you. Okay.
Yeah. Double act.
Do I need to bring up your PowerPoint?
Yeah, if that's all right, gives you a bit of a visual, helps me stay on track.
There we go.
Oh, fab, thank you. So, my name is Morvyn Sanderson. I'm the Children and Young People's Worker from the Darlington Circuit, and I also am a member at the Well, which is a church on North Road in Darlington, one of our big main arteries. If you know Darlington, it's a massive big road that goes all the way from the A1 into town, and we're probably like in the middle, I would say. Graham, do you want to introduce yourself?
I am Graham, and I'm part of the Well, help with on the leadership team.
So Hella asked us to just share what we do at the Well, and she gave us some questions. So I've tried to stick to the questions because we can like talk for Britain about the Well. So I've tried to stick to it. So if we go on the next slide, it just sort of explains some of the projects that we have. I've gone visual so you can see what we do. So we run a baby bank, which is for the whole town. So people donate to us really good secondhand items of baby equipment, and we pass that on to people who need it. It started off, I think we've been going 2 years in February, and it's sort of kind of taken over quite a lot. The Well's full of baby stuff, which is amazing, and we think we have quite a big impact. So it's a project that we're quite proud of. We run a charity shop as well, so we have very low cost affordable things in the charity shop. People are always trying to give us more money because we're not very good at being salespeople. We run a pantry, which is kind of like a food bank, but it's just always there. So every time we're open, it's full, and people can just come and take what they need. And lots of people come and donate as well. So people that come into the charity shop put stuff in there, and people from church put stuff in there, and then anybody who needs something for their dinner, or they just come and take what they need. We run a small cafe, which obviously at the moment we're all closed, but we've got like lovely coffee machine, and bacon sandwiches and scones and things like that. In the back of our church building, it's quite it's a big yard, but it's got an amazing garden in it. So we have a huge polytunnel, and we have raised beds, and we grow lots of different fruit and vegetables in there, and basically we offer that out to the community, or we use it in our community lunch that we have once a week, where we make soup and things. So that's a project that is always growing, and it's a really it's a positive thing for mental health as well, and we have a lot of people that pop into the garden and do some volunteering. We run Messy Church from the Well on a monthly basis, and then we also run a project in the school holidays called Make Lunch, where we've partnered with TLG, and we've done that for the last 4 years, out of the Wells building in its different guises, where we provide hot food for families, children and their grown-ups. Over lockdown, we haven't been able to do that. We haven't been able to invite people in, so we've done Bags of Hope instead, and they've gone out to families where we've been able to feed them more than we would have been able to feed them, but obviously we haven't been able to cook for them, so that's a bit disappointing, and we obviously haven't been able to have those chats over coffee and do all of those things, which is disappointing, and it's had to be a high on the doorstep instead when we've gone and delivered things. So that's kind of, have I missed anything, Graham?
I think that sounds good. Yeah.
We are a church as well. So we have intergenerational worship. Our services are very relaxed and people run around, and we hope that it's a welcoming experience for anybody who walks in off the street. We try and make it a place where people feel welcome and at home, even if they've never been in church before. And we love the fact that sometimes people come to church who have come to our charity shop, come to community lunch, come to Messy Church, and then they come on a Sunday morning, and we do have some of that crossover, which is brilliant. So we'll go on the next slide. I think Graham's going to take us through this one.
Yeah, so there's a bit of kind of historical context to this. The building where the well is now used to be Northland Methodist Church, and it closed probably about 4 or 5 years ago. It ceased to meet about 4 or 5 years ago, and the circuit at that time made a very bold decision to keep the building open rather than just sell it automatically, and to begin to wonder what might happen there. At the same time, Piermont Church, which was probably just less than a mile away, were engaged in all sorts of community projects where we were at the time. But over the course of a number of months, quite a short number of months actually, God began to speak to us. And in the meantime, we had been investing some time and some of our project emphasis from Piermont into what was happening in Northland. But God began to speak to us and began to say, the redevelopment what we've been planning for Piermont, that wasn't to happen, and we were to move to the well. And it became kind of quite clear through lots of different ways. And we took this kind of big step of faith to expand our projects there and also eventually move there. So Piermont closed last September, and we became the well last October. And we've seen some growth there despite the challenges of lockdown and everything else. But it was very kind of deliberately, this is going to be different, and very deliberately we were setting out to plant an intergenerational church where everyone could feel that they were learning together and learning with each other. So I think that's what we've been doing, and we've been continuing that even during lockdown by doing services online, and then we've eventually become brave enough to put those onto a public facing site as well. So that's been interesting.
Yeah, so if we go on to the next, so in terms of like the context about why we do what we do, North Road is quite a challenging area. It's got some lovely new houses on an estate, but most of it is old terraced houses with no gardens and just backyards. It's a lot of social housing and private rented housing, which brings its own set of its own dimensions really. We work really closely with one of our primary schools, and it's probably in the middle of everything. So it's probably got 50% of children, over 50% I think, who meet the criteria for pupil premium funding, and that's about supporting disadvantaged pupils to reach their potential really. And the ward itself is in the top 10% most deprived wards in England, so that kind of gives you a perspective of where we are, and we're sort of situated right in the middle of all of that. And the work that is sort of built on that framework, that this is what our community looks like and this is what we want to address when we're thinking about our projects. There's certain things that we wouldn't do, and there's things that we want to do in order to support people that live in our area. I think it's about context, isn't it? And the well is in a specific context, and so we try to make sure that when our outward facing is important, it's meeting the needs of those people. That's what it's about. If you go on the next slide, I've just put like things that I think that church should be, that we think church should be, and this sort of, I think it's the basis of the things that why we do the things that we do. So the church is a place that should be a place of safety and refuge, should be a place to start again, a place to anchor when things are chaotic, which in lots of people's lives they are. The church should be a family when you haven't got one, and it should hold you when you are in pain. And the church should inspire us and encourage us and it should be a springboard for people to meet Jesus and have opportunities to explore that relationship with him. And I think that kind of is why the things that we do at the Well sort of encourage those things, and hopefully people view us that way. And I think the feedback that we've had so far is that people do see us like that, which is really lovely. And people come back and ring us and say, can I have this, and I need this, and that's kind of validating that we're doing the right thing. But we obviously have plans for more, so watch this space.
Thank you very much, Morvyn and Graham. Very, very fascinating. Right, we're going to move from Darlington to Willington, if that's okay with you, Sue.
That's it. Good morning, everyone. My name's Sue. I am part of the church in Willington Open Door Methodist Church. We're a small church with a big heart, and pre-COVID we host a food bank, but we also ran Fair Share 3 days a week, and we have something called our Confident Community, which came out of the local secondary school, which is about just encouraging people to realise their potential for themselves and for the community. And so when lockdown hit us, we decided that we would carry on feeding people. And as we were about to hit the Easter holidays, we normally do a holiday hunger activity where we invite probably 15-20 families in for cookery. We couldn't do that, but we have a church member who used to run a cafe, and she came in and cooked hot meals, and we did a cookery pack for people. What took us aback was, apart from the families that normally came, we had a whole pile of elderly residents who turned up at the door and said, could we get a hot meal please, because we can't get to the shops, we can't get orders online. And we realised that we'd got a problem that was bigger than we'd anticipated. And so we went to the Area Action Partnership and said, we think there's an issue here. And that started a journey that I just don't know how it's happened really, but it's God's gracious provision as far as I'm concerned. We provide food on 3 days a week. We deliver now hot meals to people who are vulnerable and elderly. We provide Fair Share food boxes for families and vulnerable people who are mobile to come and collect. We provide online support and some face-to-face support out in the yard. And we have developed a community really. I mean, it's been wonderful to just get to know the community which we're in the middle of. Willington's an ex-mining community, it's high deprivation. Most of our referrals have come from police, education, health, because a lot of the public sector provision hasn't been open. We have, by the end of October, we'd provided over 7,000 hot meals, the same equivalency of food packages. In the last half term, I thought I was naive because we were busy over the summer with activities. We also provide at least a minimum of monthly activities to both the elderly and to families. So we put out puzzle packs or activity packs, and in the school holidays, always a cookery pack as well. I don't know what we'll do when lockdown ends, because in October half term we had over 75 households taking part in the cookery, and we provided 431 hot meals that week, which was up from the 366 which had been our previous highest. So the demand is just increasing. And why I think the word for us has been trust, because the number of days I've just gone in and thought, how are we going to do this? And yet the food that we require has been there. People in the community have just been so generous. We have an elderly couple who must buy a carload of food 3 times a week and just bring it round, who probably should be shielding themselves. Never met them before the start of this. And now you're just building relationships all the time. In September, we started having appointment only ability for people to come in. And again, the take up of that was such that we do that 2 days a week, and we could fill capacity more than that. We've had to stop it at the moment, obviously, in this lockdown, but we continue with telephone and online support. I look back and I think, I don't know how it's happened, but we, through all of this, are now working at opening a community cafe, and so that's actually ready to go when we're allowed to, so that there will be a sort of donation only food option available there, and the cafe will meet the needs of ordinary church activities if they ever get back to being ordinary church activities. We have giving people a purpose, a focus and a purpose is really important. So we have some of our older members who are shielding, making Bible verses or little things that can go in. So every meal bag that goes out has a Bible verse and something of encouragement within it. We've had parents come and say, I haven't got room on my fridge door to stick any more Bible verses, where do I put them? We've had people knitting, so we've provided lots of stuff for the Prem baby units and different things, and it's just trying to give people that sense of purpose. And we continue with God's provision, because it certainly doesn't come out of our church provision, because we are just a really quite small church community. But we've gone from, very interestingly, being a lot of the public sector maybe being a bit suspicious of us, to now just having a respect that, to the point that people come and say, what do you think the needs are for the community, and how do we respond to them? And it's just been an incredible journey to be on. Does that help? Don't know. I didn't look at the time, so.
No, pardon, you're absolutely fine with time. Can you just say a little bit about the Facebook page as well, because you put sermons on there?
Yeah, we as a church, we are not, well, I'm not technically minded at all, but what we do is every week we decided that through the Facebook page, we didn't even have a Facebook page much before lockdown, but through the Facebook page we realized that people really communicate in that route. It was a good way to connect, and so every Sunday and sometimes during the week we just put something out. And again, it fascinates me. I mean, if we put something out about food, we can hit 1,000 people easily. But every Sunday, we are now picking up over 100 people who are connecting, as well as the Bible verses. We're doing a activity series for the children on the Old Testament, where there's a series of things that are going out every week with the fair share boxes that they can participate in, and if they participate in all of it, then they get something at the end of it. We've done weekly competitions that were not church orientated, but these are now very much Bible based activities. And again, I mean, we've been amazed at the response. So given that we're giving out probably 100 or so every week, we certainly have more than 10% who are sending us pictures, participating every week. If they come and we forget to give them one, saying, where's our pack, what can we do this week? And there's just, God is opening doors.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so from Willington in the Dales, we're going to move to Middlesbrough, and it's going to be Sharon's turn to speak what's going on in Middlesbrough.
Sorry there. Right. Hi, I'm Sharon. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, is that all right? I'm Sharon and I'm the community outreach worker at Trinity Methodist Church. We have a project called Trinity Family Friendly Centre. It's a bit of a mouthful, so for short we call it TFFC. TFFC aim to bridge that gap between the church and the community, and we do this through various activities. We've got a mother and toddlers group. We have cake decorating, we have flower arranging, baby massage. We have a adult learning service called WEA, and they're absolute brilliant. They've been around for about 100 years, and their mission is to raise aspirations and develop people who are from disadvantaged backgrounds. We have a food bank. We also run Feast of Fun. So Feast of Fun is in the school holidays, and we have around about 80 children and the families. They don't leave the children. We don't do any childcare. The families are they come with them, because really we want to get that contact with the families and get to know everybody in the area. The one thing, when I've started at Trinity, I set up a cafe called Unity Cafe, and I worked with the local school, the local secondary school, and it was a bunch of kids that had been expelled from school. And these were kids who were known for antisocial behaviour in the area. So I thought that would be a great opportunity to build bridges with these kids, to get to know people in the church. So these kids ended up actually helping me to pick the table and chairs, down to the slushy machine. So they helped set this cafe up, and it was absolutely fantastic. And the Unity Cafe, it's absolutely amazing. We've got really high quality food for low prices, but people can come and eat in the cafe for free. We welcome families and widows and people who wouldn't normally go to free food services. So there's lots of free food services in the Middlesbrough area, but those services are normally taken up by people with like problems, maybe drug and alcohol. So for families and individuals who are in food poverty, wouldn't normally go to them free food services. So there is a gap, there's a gap there. So that's why we set up the Unity Cafe. We have a pay it forward scheme, so the people who can afford it, they can pay it forward for somebody else to have a meal or a cup of tea, and those who can't pay, they don't pay. So in the cafe as well, we're very open about our Christianity. We don't hide it. We have the music playing in the background. I'm always there. I love sharing the gospel with people and telling them my testimony. And we have a Bible study as well on a Thursday afternoon, and people stay and listen to the Bible study. So where I'm situated is in Winniebanks, and it's a really deprived area in Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough is hit harder than any other area for food poverty. 4 in 10 children are on the breadline. So that's 42% of kids in our town affected by food poverty. And I've got a little bit of understanding of how that might impact children and the families. I myself was on free school meals when I was a kid, so I know how that feels, that little bit of like, I don't know, feeling embarrassed and not having enough, you know, at home, and you know, those things, the treats and stuff like that. So that really stirred something up within me, you know, to help, oh sorry, someone's come behind the phone, to help combat the food poverty in our area. So that's why we set up the Unity Cafe, and people can come in, and if we're able to, and we've got some surplus food, we'll give them that. So that's the main thing we're doing at the minute, is the Unity Cafe. But when the lockdown came, I seen it as a real, you know, time that the church church has got this opportunity to go out and share the love of God in the community. So like we've been staying in the church all that time waiting for people to come in, like being in the cafe, and it was starting to get like quite a few people in, but I think people find it hard actually walking through the doors of the church. So the lockdown, I've seen it as like God giving us a big boot, you know, out the church and saying go. So there's been many times in church when I felt like commissioned to go out, you know, go out. He said go, he didn't say stay in the church. So what I did, I wanted to do something proactive. So I ended up getting funding. I got quite a lot of funding. So I was able then to, the Citizens Advice Bureau and Safer Families were referring people into me, and Citizens Advice were getting people who were shielding in the lockdown, people with COVID. So I was going around and delivering food. I would go to the shops and do like a week's supply of shopping. And people were just overwhelmed at the generosity of the church, and they were calling back Citizens Advice and saying like they were just overwhelmed that we would be doing this. And then in the lockdown also, because we couldn't do the Feast of Fun, we put packs together, food packs for the kids, little activities. We went out and bought toys and puzzles and games and things like that, and put little packs together. And another thing that I was able to do was get food stamps as well. So just to give them the little bit of dignity back, that they could go into the shops and choose their own food instead of me going and picking, even though I was doing a good weekly shop for them, but giving them the dignity back that they could go, if they were able to, go and choose the shopping themselves. So, which has been really successful, and the Citizens Advice is still referring people to me now. And I've built up, through the lockdown, I've done more community engagement than I've ever done in the last 2 years, and built relationships with people in the community that when the lockdown got, the levels got lowered and we were able to open the Unity Cafe again, we opened it up when the restrictions went down a bit, and it was incredible, the people that came in through that community engagement. People were coming in, and we had a full like cafe. I couldn't believe it. So it was amazing. We had a full cafe. I did a Bible study. Everybody was like listening every single word I was saying in the Bible study. And one girl, she gave her life to the Lord, which really, that's what it's all about for me, is extending the kingdom of God. Like, I just love sharing because of my own testimony, because the only person who can transform the lives of these people is Jesus. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. So yeah, have I missed anything out? Also in the lockdown, which I'm doing now, is I meet people who were referred from Safer Families. I meet them for a walk. So yeah, we've just, because things, you have to think what can we do instead of thinking of the things we can't do. We can get out and walk with somebody. So a lot of people, like families, there was a lady who was on her own. She came from Africa and she didn't know anybody. So I met up with her the other day. And that means the world to somebody who hasn't got anybody. The thing I've seen in this lockdown, there's so many people who are isolated on their own. So it's been amazing that as a church, we can reach out to those people and make a difference. And I think that's what the lockdown's been, that opportunity for the church to be the church, you know, and go out and be the arms and feet of Jesus and actually do what we were called to do. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for sharing with us. Right. So, and then finally from Middlesbrough, we're going to move to Middleton in Teesside. And Debbie is going to tell us what she gets up to there.
I'm just going to share my screen. I hope everybody can hear me, because I know my sound sometimes drops in and out. So hello, if you could give me a thumbs down if you can't hear. But good morning, everybody. I'm Debbie, and I work as a development worker at the Pathway Methodist Church in Middleton in Teesdale. So this just shows you on the slide a picture of the church and a bit of Middleton. So I only began my role in January, and it's evolved in a sort of a very different way as what I might have imagined. So the main focus of my role is to be a link between the church and the community. So obviously I had all these ideas as I started my job in January, and then March came and kind of, well, didn't put a stop to things, but made me have to think about things in a different way. So I've tried to explore sort of creative ways of still doing this and still being able to share God's love. And it's kind of like people have already said, it's just looking at what you can do rather than what you can't do. So during lockdown, I started by setting up prayer stations, which I did at home, and then I put these onto the church website, and then so people could access them on the website, but then they were also printed out and delivered to members who didn't have a website. And it was really quite interesting because I kind of thought at the end of lockdown I'd stop doing that, because I kind of feel like things have a season in a sense, and then it's time to do something different. But actually talking to people, it was really lovely to sort of see how they'd responded to them, and they wanted me to sort of continue with them. So I have continued with them, and it's just been really interesting to see what people have done in response to these. And then quite early on, I decided that it was really important to sort of build links with the local primary school. The school has sort of been struggling quite a bit and had changes in leadership and quite a high staff turnover. So we're really sort of struggling quite a bit. So we decided to launch Pray, Bake, Read. And that's where all of the congregation commit to pray for the school. And then there's a small team of us that bake. And the original idea was to bake sort of fortnightly or monthly. But we decided that maybe it was good to bake weekly. So there's a small team of us, as I say, that sort of bake cakes. Sorry if you can hear the dog barking. And take them into school. And then there's another team who have signed up to support children by reading with them. Now, obviously, we haven't been able to do that during lockdown, but that's sort of our aspiration for the future, is that actually there's going to be another team that go and support the children through reading. And the staff really look forward to their weekly bakes, as you can imagine. So apparently they dash into the staff room to see what they've got this week. And so it's been really appreciated, I think, by the whole staff. And I kind of just feel it's all about sharing God's love and about the message that we give to them. So then out of Pray, Bake, Read came Pray, Bake, Chat. And this was really a response to the loneliness and isolation that was being experienced by probably particularly older members in the community. So we wanted to find a way to sort of stay in touch with them, to stay connected. And so again, a small team of us bake fortnightly. So there's a lot of baking going on in Middleton. And what we try and do is to produce an afternoon tea in a box. So there's just an example here. And then we deliver them to the members of the community who are sort of particularly feeling isolated, feeling on their own, feeling like they're not connected. And we consciously make time to have a doorstep chat with them. In the summer, obviously, we could go into their gardens and sort of sit at a distance and have a chat, and that was lovely. But in the sort of driving wind and rain, it's kind of a bit more difficult at the moment. But I think they really, really do appreciate the time that's given to that. And obviously they love the cakes, but I think the chat is the most important thing. So there's just a picture here of some of our recipients enjoying their cakes. And then over the summer holiday, I'd been hoping to run a holiday club at church. So obviously this wasn't possible, but I decided to do a holiday at home club, which actually was inspired by Emma. So I don't think Emma's still around, but I'd love her to know that she'd inspired me. We don't actually have any children that are part of the church. So actually thinking about running a holiday club was a bit of a challenge, really, to know how to connect with people. But actually, social media is amazing for things like that. And I think also being part of a community, a lot of it is word of mouth as well. So very soon we had lots of families who were registering, which was great. And then even more, so then that got a bit scary, really. But I've got a brilliant team that sort of work with me. And so each week we prepared activity packs and food bags containing recipes and ingredients to make a family meal. And the packs and the foods were based on a different biblical theme each week. And it was just really, really well received. I think, particularly during the summer, people were really looking for things to do with the children. Didn't necessarily have the resources to be able to do that. Couldn't really go to many places. So actually to have activities in a bag that were provided for them each week just made a huge difference. And also they couldn't believe the amount of food. We just provided enough for the whole family to make a meal, but they were just bowled over by the food. So there's just a few pictures here, some of the activities. And it was trying to find activities that different kinds of children could relate to. So some are sort of really outdoorsy, some were much more into craft activities. So it was just trying to provide a range of opportunities really for them. And then we're on to some of the cooking photos here. And a lot of parents actually said in the feedback that they'd never really cooked with their children before. Cooking was just sort of quite functional. So they just wanted to get on and do it. And they'd never really involved the children. And they said that actually being encouraged to do that was just a real special time for them. And because it was so well received, we decided during the autumn half-term break that we would do an October holiday club as well, just as a kind of a one-off. So we did that on a light theme, obviously to tie in with Halloween and pumpkins and things like that. And again, I think social media and word of mouth is brilliant because it grew, and we had nearly all of our summer families came back, and then we had lots of new ones as well. So I've put, so what next? Because I'm always thinking, what next, and how do we stay connected with people? How do we provide different things? How do we find different ways of sharing God's love? So as part of the Village Lights switch on, I've been able to work alongside the community group. So that's been really good to kind of feel like I'm really part of that community now. So I've asked local shops to decorate a window for Christmas. And the theme that I chose is Christmas songs and carols, because again, I thought that was a good way of sort of bringing a bit of religion into it. So the theme I chose, we sort of had a list that people could choose from. So they've all signed up for a different song or a different carol. And initially it started off being just shops that were going to do that, but it proved so popular that now we've got private residences. So just people in their homes have asked to decorate windows as well. So hopefully that's going to be a really positive thing. That's happening the end of November, beginning of December. So hopefully I'll have some more photos in the next couple of weeks. And then the other thing that I'm hoping to do is to provide nativity boxes for certainly families that we're already connected with, but also, again, hopefully try and include some more families from the community. And these are just going to include a simple version of the Christmas story and then resources so that they're able to sort of retell the story and focus on different parts of the story in different ways. So that's kind of where I am really. So I haven't been there a year yet, but it seems to have been a bit of a whirlwind of the last couple of months. And as I say, sort of it's evolved in a very different way to what I might have imagined. But I actually think it's been really exciting. And as somebody mentioned before, it's kind of I suppose, enabled me to take church out into the community, maybe sort of in a more positive and perhaps a more relevant way to people than I might have done. So yeah, so that's me.
Thank you, Debbie. If you stop, yeah, that's it. I mean, a huge thank you to everybody who's come and spoken this morning about the projects in your community. Are there any questions? I have a couple written down that I'm usually interested in, because people who are thinking about setting up a project in a community, these are usually the first two questions. But questions I normally get asked is, what is the ideal, and I'm sure there's not an ideal answer to this one, but what is the ideal size of a team that you would need to set up an initiative? So any of the speakers, how do you feel about that? Or has it happened organically, I would say?
I think as long as you've got passionate people, it doesn't really matter. But you need at least 3 or 4 people that can help you, I think, just to like, yeah, make sure that you're not doing everything by yourself. Mm-hmm. But yeah, passionate, energetic people.
We've had to trust who God brings along, really, and we've had the most you look back at the friends that Jesus chose, and it's been an interesting bunch that have arrived in Willington, but they've been amazing, and they've all brought their own individual gifts, and we would not have managed without them. But I think energy and commitment and a willingness to just muck in is that. But I mean, we started with a very small team because most of the volunteers that had helped before were having to shield in reality, and so we had to start and build and seek people, and people came forward.
Yeah.
I think, as Sue mentioned earlier on, about sort of giving people a focus, and I think different people can help in different ways. So it might be somebody who's perhaps more housebound can help by doing something that's, you know, more of a sort of a preparation job, whereas somebody with more energy might be able to actually help with kind of being out and about during the day, giving things out or whatever it might be.
I mean, I know that each project individually is also surrounded by prayer, and that's usually a very important point to kind of start from, is by praying, but then also continuing having a team of people who pray for that project, either within their location or circuit or even district-wide, if that's possible. But yeah, definitely with prayer in this one. Another question that I get asked is, and this has been mentioned as well, is the cost, covering costs. So I've heard that there's been, obviously you can apply for grants, and there's also been a generosity of people who've seen what's happening in their community. Is there any other ways that we haven't kind of covered that costs can be met, or kind of help somebody to think that don't worry about the cost so much? Or am I just being crazy?
I'd go to prayer. I would say, I mean, don't get me wrong, we've had grants and we've had generosity, but my goodness, I mean, our fair share 12 months ago would have fitted on one table. Now I would need 20 tables, and it's come. As the need has risen, the food has come. And for me, that's the people who are stuck at home, a lot of them, but who can do the most important thing, and that's pray.
Yeah, John?
If I may just for a moment speak on behalf of Emma, I think that I think what's vitally important in my humble opinion, is that, you know, that the church is willing to support places that might not necessarily in the beginnings and in the infancy of these projects give back to the church, if you get me. You know, I think we've got to do some sowing of seed, should we say. You know, I see Hope for East Cleveland has definitely been a new church plant in time, but for a time it's going to need an awful lot of financial support from the circuit to kind of get off the ground. I think that's really important.
Great. Well, this brings our time together to an end. I've specifically kept this to an hour around there so that it's a quick drop in for people to come and hear. I mean, I hope it has been inspirational. It certainly has been inspirational to me and helped you to see how God furthers his kingdom by using his own people and just meeting the needs and being actually aware of the needs in first place, but then meeting the needs just like Jesus would. I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who contributed. Thank you for taking out your time on Saturday morning and speaking to us about your project. So yeah, so from here on, this is the end, and I hope you have a wonderful Saturday and a wonderful weekend. You take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.